Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Historical Humans podcast. My name is Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-hosts, Colum, Coleman, and Aaron Gilpin. And today, on Season 3, Episode 9, we're going to be taking a deep dive down to one of the greatest shipwrecks of all time that claimed some of her newest victims very
Yep.
recently.
I was gonna say, hopefully we don't go too deep on this dive. The last group didn't come back up.
We're talking about the Titanic,
Oh,
of
no.
course. If that joke didn't sink already.
Uh,
Oh, there's a lot of icebergs ahead.
yeah. Yep. The Titanic was a British White Star Line steamship. It was built by Harland and Wolff in Belfast, Ireland. It cost $7.5 million to construct, had a carrying capacity of just over 46,000 tons, displaced 52,000 tons of seawater, was 269 meters long, and 28.2 meters wide, making her the largest vessel in just about every category on the sea at the time of her construction. Her official name was the RMS Titanic. And she was commissioned specifically for use in what was known as the transatlantic passenger trade. Now, what this was pretty much a booming industry around the turn of the 20th century. It primarily consisted of giving rich people pleasure cruises from like England to America and back again. It was a very big thing to do. It also made up for any shortcoming of rich people by packing its holds full of immigrants headed for the New World.
Nothing says classy like shoving the third class full of the Irish.
Oh yeah. Oh, not the third class steerage. Fun fact: the HMS Titanic was known. It is not the HMS. It's the RMS Titanic because it is not a military vessel. It is RMS. The RMS Titanic. Their third class was actually became quite famous because it supposedly had amenities like actual beds and doors.
Oh.
So it was considered luxurious even for the third class tickets. Yeah, fun times. Now, as we kind of hinted upon a little bit at the end of our very first season with the Gilded Age episode, at the turn of the 20th century, almost everything is a monopoly. One or two companies control everything, and the transatlantic passenger trade was no exception. Only two companies are involved in it: the White Star Line and Cunard are the only people doing it. Now, Cunard had just as soon as 1907 set two records back to back for the swiftest crossing of the Atlantic. They did so with their latest state-of-the-art ships, the Lusitania and the Mauretania. Each of which on their voyages set out and set records, being each one faster than the other. This was a challenge that White Star could not afford to ignore. You don't want to be the slow, sluggish option.
There is one thing that all of these ships just so happen to have in common that really, I don't know the best way to put it. Unfortunate fates.
Oh yeah.
Right, the Lusitania. Oh my God!
Yeah, it's the Lusitania. It is the Lusitania.
Oh my! I've never put that together.
She outlasts the Titanic by a good deal, so you can't say she fails.
But yeah.
Yeah, no. Like almost every ship we talk about today is destined for the watery depths. No one survives.
I hate it. It's the worst.
Yeah, it's great. So, what White Star does in response to this challenge is they go, okay, Cunard's fastest. They've been faster than we ever thought was possible. We're not going to beat them with speed. So what we're going to do is we're going to let them be the quickest, railway to the west. But we will be dignified. For we will be the most luxurious cruise liner to ever cruise the line. And so, in a true act of excess to counter the 2 fast ships built by Cunard, White Star built 3 luxury liners.
Oh, if we can't beat them in speed, we'll beat them in style. I love it. That's a feisty, competitive attitude and a can-do mentality.
Yeah. I mean, I can never resist like a good story like that.
Yeah. So the White Star executives go to their primary shipbuilder in Belfast, Harland and Wolff, and they commission these 3 vessels, which are launched in this order: Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic. Things do not go well.
Again, every single ship.
It's just like at a certain point you had to know.
I think so far, the Mauritania is the only one that didn't meet the Poseidon's locker or Davy Jones's locker, whatever it is.
Yeah, what happened to it?
It got scrapped. Apparently Franklin Roosevelt was really upset by its scrapping and wrote to petition to avoid the scrapping.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, very, very fond of that ship.
I believe in 1911, the Mauretania broke loose from her mooring and wrecked herself on the shores of New York.
I didn't say she hasn't crashed. She definitely has crashed, but
I don't think it sunk her, but I do believe she ran herself aground well docked, which is truly impressive.
I mean, just the timing of this recording as well. There's so much ship-related carnage.
Is anyone going to believe that we planned this out in October?
I would hope so, because we don't need any more conspiracy theories.
Admittedly, to date, the time we set up the schedule, it was around the time of the submarine disaster, or whatever that date was, it was pretty well coincided.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was thinking of the current thing going on.
Part of why
everything is bad, but this has been on the list for a while.
Do not look at the people behind the screens.
The Titanic has been on the list of a topic for us to do.
The Titanic was my first historical fascination. Yeah. I became obsessed with the Titanic in 3rd grade.
Yeah, and it has been on the list of something to do a main topic about since our season 1 finale in November of 2022?
Something like that. But
so,
these two nerds here were interested in the Roman Empire. No, my Roman Empire was the Titanic.
Yeah.
You and the rest of TikTok.
Didn't last very long. Anyway, the Titanic, the Olympic, and the Britannic are all designed by the same man, Thomas Andrews. He will come back later, but that is the man behind this ship design.
Well, let's not talk about the favorite thing we mentioned earlier, the company that built them, Harland and Wolff, where it was a part of Ireland. The Irish had built the ship.
She was built in Belfast.
This is prior to the Republic of Ireland.
Belfast.
By a few years.
Enemies with all of Ireland, and I'm sorry for it.
Just
that's the English side coming out.
The word Belfast.
Well, okay, I will say something that will hopefully redeem me to my Celtic brethren, in that the Irish built the Titanic, but the English sank her. And these two did not know that saying before I mentioned it.
It's a wonderful thing. Listen. I've heard the Irish Rovers. I've heard their songs. I know about this ship. I don't talk about it. Now, it took just over 3 years to completely construct the Titanic. She began production in March of 1909, and she was officially completed in April of 1912.
Hey. That sounds really familiar.
Yeah, because that's also the same month that she sinks. They literally clear her for transport like the week she goes down.
You know, I would hate to have been the insurance company to underwrite the Titanic.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's the biggest and most luxurious ship to ever set sail. There is there is no price tag.
Which, Aaron, you were mentioning conspiracy theories earlier about how the ships were switched. Part
Mm-hmm.
of that conspiracy
Oh,
is the ships were switched as an insurance scam. One of the earliest ever.
of course.
That's not what happened. That's not what happened. We don't condone conspiracies on this channel.
As I have a Bigfoot tattooed on my arm.
We don't condone conspiracies. Yeah. Pay no attention to the man with the ink.
All right. Anyways, yes,
Yes.
the English sunk the Titanic. Unfortunately, tragic.
Yeah. Now, the Titanic, by the time of its maiden voyage, was hailed under the nickname the Millionaire's Special. And there were several reasons for this. The first of which was the choice of captain for the Titanic. Was none other than a man by the name of Edward Smith, a captain of many years on the sea, who had long since built a reputation of being particularly well liked by the richest of the rich among his passengers.
That's not a bad thing to be known for. Good old Eddie
Yeah.
Smith.
Yeah. That was his renown. That was a big factor as to why he got the Titanic. It's the biggest and most luxurious ship the White Star Line has ever built. Naturally, it's going to get its most popular captain among all of the gentry. The other reason was the accommodations. So first class included not just the ornate decorations. Everything on that ship was pretty much hand carved.
Oh, the staircase
and
was beautiful.
Yeah, and designed to be some form of classical or Baroque or any other form of art or architectural style that would be even remotely in vogue.
Oh, fun fact, the Titanic staircase, which is known as one of the most masterful carvings today, was so ornate, so well carved. James Cameron, when filming the movie, helped solve a long
Yes.
undiscovered fact about the Titanic. One of the biggest debates was what happened to the Great Grand Staircase when the ship sank. Because there was no evidence of it, it was not present, it wasn't in either half of the ship. And when they were doing the filming for the movie Titanic in 1997, James Cameron had the staircase commissioned almost to a T to the original. And when they were filming the scene, they realized the staircase, which was made of wood, floated.
Yeah. Yeah, the staircase floated away. And a part of the reason why it's able to float away and do that, and we'll discuss this more when we get to the actual sinking of the Titanic, is the Titanic got cracked in half like an egg. So, there's room for it to flow away. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. But we're here to talk about the amenities. The Titanic had 4 elevators for first class use. Now, elevators are something of a novelty in 1912. They've been around for a little bit, but to put one on a boat is fancy.
That does sound pretty fancy. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Even a boat on this size, comparable liners, you would still be using stairs. For the most part, elevators weren't really that much of a thing beyond like simple cargo loading type things. So having personal elevators was a very big deal.
I mean, shit, that's still a luxury in certain hotels. Like, if you get the penthouse suite, you get a private elevator right up to your room.
Yeah.
Like, that's still a very common thing. So to have the elevators is awesome, especially when those filthy peasants down in steerage have to walk the stairs.
It's that English side in them is bad today. What the hell?
I know.
My English pride is coming out. Sorry, lads.
Yep. It also featured an immense dining saloon. This dining hall was absolutely massive. Um, you know, imagine like your high school cafeteria times like 5, and everything is made of silver and marble.
Only the classiest establishments for the finest passengers aboard this lovely
Rich
vessel.
people live there.
Yeah. And of course, also available to first class was the now basically mainstay of almost any cruise line, the onboard swimming pool.
Which is still full to this day.
It's never going to be empty, Justin. It's never going to be empty.
Hey, it is. That pool has the record of like the longest active pool ever. But yes, the fact that the first class had their own swimming pool was just a sign of the opulence and luxury, especially at this time when towards the end of the 1800s into the turn of the century, their ships were a lot more utilitarian. You saw a lot more steamboat cruisers going that would just have room for passengers, and that was it. So to have this kind of luxury, this kind of attention to detail and opulence, they were specifically catering to that audience with those details.
Yeah, and to sort of drive it home, the second class tickets on the Titanic received accommodations that were similar to first class tickets on almost any other luxury cruiser in existence at the time. So a second class ticket on the Titanic got you the same amenities as a first class ticket on her rival vessels, the Lusitania and Mauretania.
That's honestly just a flex. That's just a straight up flex. They were just like,
Yeah, they wanted to be more luxurious. Like, if
you're only having second class amenities, you poor soul. You must be Scottish or Welsh.
Yeah. Oh, the Welsh second class. The Welsh is second class. That's an upgrade for the Welsh if we're looking at the history of Britain.
Hey, they need like a minor win, and around this period, they were a lot more passive than Ireland.
Yeah.
I don't like to be associated with you people anymore.
Well, you should have seen that a long time ago, Aaron. You've been with us for years.
I know, but that one, goddamn, what the hell?
Hey, I loved watching your jaw drop on that one.
I have so many friends there. Welsh. What the hell?
All right. Since we're in the throwing hands mood, we're going to go to the last reason why this was called the Millionaire Special, and that was because all these first class tickets got to sell to someone. So there were quite a few very, shall we say, famous and wealthy people on board. Some of which we've given a little bit of details below.
Yes. So one of the more prominent folks that was aboard the ship was its designer, Thomas Andrews, who was the father and the Titanic was the brainchild of, was a prominent designer and architect and had built other ships before. I believe he had actually designed a couple of the other White Star ships. I could be mistaken on that, but
yes, I will say, regardless of his record, Thomas Andrews had absolute faith in his vessel. He is sailing on its maiden voyage, and he does die with his ship. He is among those lost at sea.
Oh.
He is, he lived and died by his creation, which, as sobering and stark as that is, does have a certain tragic nobility to it.
Yes, he worked for Harland and Wolff. So he worked as that, and he was the one who oversaw the other 3 ocean liners: the Britannic, Olympic, and the unfortunate Titanic.
Yeah, he gave them their design. And honestly, he has even though he dies here, he has a lot more noble of a story than the other White Star representative on board this vessel.
Oh no!
Which is J. Bruce Ismay, chairman of White Star, who drew a lot of ire following the disaster when it found out that he used his rank to force his way onto a lifeboat denying seats to others. Now, at the time, there was a strict policy in place that was considered humanitarian, that women and children must board lifeboats first and men afterwards. This was because everyone knew most vessels didn't stock enough seats on their lifeboats. And so it was seen as saving the priority.
The future.
People. Yeah, the future, the people of home, of house and home. However, of course, Mr. Ismay saw himself as a priority person and forced his way onto a lifeboat.
And then there was Isidore Strauss and actually his wife as well, who was the co-owner of Macy's department store.
Yeah.
And they unfortunately went down with the ship. And that was actually immortalized in a scene in the Titanic where it's an older couple laying in their bed. Just reportedly how they went down, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I did not know they paid that much attention to detail.
It's surprisingly fairly accurate with adding a soppy love story on top of it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things in there.
Like the entire sinking sequence is fully accurate to our knowledge.
Yeah, there was a fun thing I would have liked to see with the grand staircase scene though, because supposedly there was a man. His name I can't pronounce. He's not on the list, unfortunately. It started with a G. It was like 10 syllables long, and I think German. But he and his valet, dressed up in their best suits, walked into the grand dining hall and said, "Well, we are here to die like gentlemen," and took a seat.
And then the room flooded. Badass.
And then the room flooded as everyone ran out.
We die like gentlemen. God
yeah.
damn. What?
I loved the Gilded Age ego, turn of the century optimism, this bravado.
Yeah. Another person was John Jacob Astor IV. He was a sci-fi novelist and a hotel mogul from New York. His grandfather or great-grandfather was the original John Jacob Astor, who was a fur trader way back in the colonial days of New York and made the family into one of the most prominent upstate New York families.
What about John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt?
Well, that was my name too.
Well, yeah. We'll talk about him.
What happens when you go out? Do people always shout?
Yeah.
There goes John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. Da, 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 da.
Too much.
I knew giving these people a list of names from the 19th century was a mistake, but here we are.
Oh, I'm going to use it for a baby book.
Yeah.
Which person should we name our child after that died on the Titanic, honey? Richard? Oh, how about John Jacob?
All right. Next up is Molly Brown. Fun fact, she was not known as Molly during her lifetime. And she went by Maggie, but history has a fun way of changing things around for her. So she was an American philanthropist and the wife of a mining executive, and she survived when she forcibly took control of a lifeboat from the crew of Titanic and led it to safety.
What?
Wait, what was that?
So Molly Brown took control of a lifeboat and led it to safety. She took control from the crew of the lifeboat she was on in order to save the lifeboat. This is because when the lifeboats detached from the Titanic, they refused to go back to help people. There are 700 people on the lifeboats. There are 1,500 people in the water, and the lifeboats are refusing to help.
And only 300
loses control of her lifeboat and starts trying to save people.
Which only 333 of those bodies were ever recovered, of which John Jacob Astor IV was one of the bodies, and they identified him by his initials sewn into his pocket and a gold pocket watch.
Yeah. The reason why Molly Brown is known as Molly Brown is because many years later, after her death, having survived the Titanic, someone made a play about her in which they changed her name from Maggie to Molly. You got to love that.
Oh, wow.
they got her name wrong in the play about her. We then come to my favorite resident English pair on this list. We have none other than Lady Lucy Duff Gordon. She was a fashion designer. She survived. Being a woman of first class, she was naturally both allowed on the lifeboats and in a position to find them. Her husband, however, Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon, an English lord, also survived. Is accused of having bribed the crew to give him one of the seats and then launch the lifeboat at less than a third capacity.
Oh, what a dick.
That bastard. What the fuck?
He claimed, following news interviews after the incident, that he had merely been attempting to offer the sailors restitution for their obvious economic losses while they were sorting the boarding parties for the lifeboats.
See, because that's what's important.
That's a really, really fancy way of saying, yeah, I gave him money. I bribed him.
Yeah. Well, because everyone else on that boat said, this man handed them money, jumped on the boat, and then the boat detached. All of the other 18 people on the boat said he did that. And it really doesn't look good if the entire boat says, yeah, no, you sacrificed some 47 people to die so that you could get away quickly.
What an absolute dickhead.
Yeah. And then we have our favorite American, the last of the many billionaires, millionaires and such slated to go on this trip, J.P. Morgan, the banker.
He died? Morgan?
And also primary financier of White Star.
No,
wait.
No, he's like most other rich people and got lucky.
Actually, he canceled his ticket like the last on the day of.
Oh, he definitely knew something. This is definitely insurance fraud.
Citing a sudden bout of illness.
That's part of why that conspiracy came up, and a couple of the people who were on board the Titanic were vehemently against a centralized banking system. Ironically, like Guggenheim was one of them. I forget.
Guggenheim, yes, that's the man who put on his tuxedo, walked into the dining hall, and said, "I am here to die like gentlemen."
Is this the same J.P. Morgan whose company?
This is the founder of J.P. Morgan Bank. Yeah. This is the founder of that bank.
So the same bank that eventually, like 30 years later, attempted to throw a coup, overthrow the U.S. government, establish a dictator.
Yep. This is the JP. We cover them a bunch in our Gilded Age episode at the end of season 1. You all should definitely check it out if you're interested in this. Fun fact, JP Morgan just simply bankrupting middle-class citizens for the fun of it is the least evil thing JP Morgan has ever done.
God, I hate this country sometimes that we allow people like him to
Aaron, that's why I was telling you about that one guy on TikTok.
Yeah. But anyway, he appeared to come down with the illness. Oh, the vapors. Day of. And simply didn't board. But he was supposed to be on it.
It's like all the celebrities that missed 9/11.
Yeah, whatever. I'm not engaging with that.
Anyways, the unsinkable ship, the ship that'll never sink, the sinking that will never happen of this ship.
Yeah. Yes.
As a big way,
the unsinkable ship.
That also just kind of is like a really kind of cheeky taunt towards the insurance fraud side of things. Oh yes, the unsinkable ship.
Yeah, it was as a way of touting the modernity of their luxurious vessel. They the White Star went out of the way to publicize themselves as having built the world's first unsinkable vessel. It was a publicity stunt that did have some degree of security measures to back it up. The reputation hinged on one key feature, which is a set of 16 floodable compartments, each of which could be closed remotely from the bridge. That was a new feature. usually with a lot of these ships at this time, when a breach occurred, you had to send a sailor down to where the breach was and close the door before the flooding got too bad. Here, you could register a breach on the an impact or a breach on the bridge and simply close all the gates and wait to see which ones actually started flooding. You did not have to worry about getting people down there in time, or anyone in the vicinity being too injured to close the door. You could just do it from the bridge. Massive increase in reaction time and reduction in the risk to the crew. There was and with this, of the 16 compartments, you could flood 4 of them without compromising the buoyancy of the vessel.
Not a super high number, but it's decent, especially in like an emergency. The idea is just to stay afloat till someone can come help you.
Yeah, definitely. There's one problem. The compartments were only theoretically watertight.
God.
When the doors are engaged, water could not flow from one compartment to the other. However, they were not capped, meaning that water could, if enough water got into the compartment, it would begin seeping up through the roof and then flood whatever was above it. You can begin to see what is about to go wrong.
Christ on a fucking cracker.
They built a tin cup and didn't put a lid on it.
I mean, they never could have imagined anything could penetrate that deep either, though. Like, let's remember that the Titanic had some of the thickest gauge steel out there on the market of that era. They did build it quite rigid and quite tough. Whether it was a corner cut, arrogance, whatever it may be, if it was just unknowing, but the idea that something could breach that far into the hull to allow that much water in was truly unthinkable.
Yeah, because
the ship was unthinkable.
Yeah, because in order for this to happen, you would have to breach more than 4 compartments at once, which was seen as a massive blow. Nothing could really do that. That they could conceive of. There's not really a way to do that. Yeah, it's peacetime. There's no way to, you're not just gonna breach that on a coral reef. And there's a reason she just placed 6,000 more tons than she can carry, and that is because she is freaking heavy.
Yeah,
she's a thick-skinned girl, but you can kind of see where once the water starts going up, you are dead. you can kind of see where the problem begins to lie. Now, what's interesting about the Titanic is she underwent her sea trials in April of 1912. This is the same month in which she is set to have her maiden voyage. She is declared seaworthy as a result of these trials, but it is, shall we say, a little close to the launch date for something that you could theoretically fail.
Yeah, it was a pretty tight margin, all things considered.
Yeah, especially given that her launch date is the 10th of April. But
oh, yeah.
Yeah, it is. So less than 10 days from testing to her launch,
and eventual sinking. That's a quick timeline.
Yeah. Which, when you consider that things moved a little bit slower in those days, meant that they were selling tickets months before they knew if this ship would be seaworthy or not.
That's confidence. But then this also is a very experienced shipyard, even if they're just cursed.
Harland and Wolff is a very renowned shipwright company. They built almost all of the White Star ships. The tragedy of the Titanic notwithstanding, those ships weren't exactly known for going down. Now, the voyage of the Titanic was meant to be from Southampton, England, to New York City, New York, USA. She leaves Southampton on April 10th, 1912, with 2,227 passengers and crew, approximately 1,300 passengers, approximately 900 crew. Now, in a twist of irony, she almost set the record for Southampton to New York immediately, as upon pushing off from the dock, she displaced so much water she drove the ship, the New York, into her.
Oh man, speed run. I like it. That's good behavior.
They spend an hour doing maneuvers trying to avoid it before they're able to get out of the harbor without causing all the other ships to crash. That's how big she is. That's how undersized the docks are for her. Yeah, it says so. She almost sets the record. Southampton to New York. She could have completed her maiden journey, right there in the harbor. Been done with it.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, but no. She gets to go on her path. By the evening of April 10th, she has arrived at her first stop, Cherbourg, France. However, the French docks were too small and dainty to accommodate the ship in any capacity. So they literally had to get a ferry to start rowing the additional passengers from France onto the vessel.
Ooh. That's quite the distance.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's pretty. It just keeps showing you that this ship is too big for the world around it. All the things that keep going on here. However, by the next day, on the morning of April 11th, she has made it to Cobb, Ireland. It's her last stop in Europe. She picks up the last of her passengers, and by 1:30 p.m. of that day, she is sailing off to New York City. She has begun the transatlantic part of her transatlantic passenger trade. And this is where things start going wrong.
So I got a little curious and I looked up how many ships built by Harland and Wolff have been sank. And the list is very concerningly high, the number that have been torpedoed and wrecked and sank.
Yeah. Yes, I wonder why so many merchant ships were sunk between 1914 and 1944. I wonder. I wonder why so many merchant vessels sink in that 30-year period.
The skill of the Northern Irish, I suppose.
Yeah.
The luck of the Irish, even.
Yep. Or you can do what we're gonna do later with the Titanic. Blame Norway.
Like I said, the Irish built it, the English sank it.
Yep.
Are you saying global warming is to get revenge for the Titanic from the Norwegians?
No,
Yes.
the Norwegians will come up later in this tale, and it does not look good for them.
Oh,
Yeah. But we'll get to that soon, because first we have to get to the star of tonight's show, the iceberg.
is it still around?
I don't know. He probably is. I mean, water never leaves the system.
Oh, well,
Ah, boo, that's cop out. It
Yeah.
probably melted. If it already became an iceberg and chipped off the glacier, that shit was just an ice cube waiting to melt. It's been 100 years.
Yeah. So
true.
at 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, just 4 days into her journey, 3 days into the transatlantic part, she strikes an iceberg across her starboard bow. Now, it is, of course, 20 minutes to midnight, and the seas at this time are almost perfectly still, meaning the iceberg did not have any breakage as it moved through the water. What this meant was, for the men in the crow's nest, the iceberg was unfortunately invisible.
Do you know what the
up until
sad
the
part
moment
about
they,
that is?
yeah,
Is the key for the lookout box had the binoculars in it so they could actually see further.
yep,
The key was with one of the watchmen who was asleep. It was not even accessible.
yep, yep. Yeah, they couldn't get their binoculars, and just basically once they noticed that, hang on, those stars are blinking, was about all the warning they had.
Oh wow.
Um, Now, at this time, the Titanic is traveling at a speed of between 22 and 25 knots, depending on who you ask. Uh, what has happened with the Titanic is the Titanic had received warnings of iceberg in the area and had diverted southward to avoid them, but had refused to slow, um, partially on the grounds that Captain Smith and the Pride of the White Star Line were going to show Lusitania and Mauretania a thing or two about luxury and speed. Thank you very much.
So you're telling me they just said there's an iceberg. Mama didn't raise no bitch. We
Yeah.
ain't moving.
What they did is they moved south because icebergs typically come from the north in the northern hemisphere. So they're like, all right, we'll go a little bit further south and we'll keep going. Uh, However, because they refused to slow and because of their radio men on the Titanic were genuinely assholes, they don't get warning. They ignore their later warnings, basically. So Titanic's radio men refuse to pass on warnings of icebergs after the Titanic begins to divert south. The reason for this is because the Titanic has exactly two radio men, and 90% of their job is constantly transmitting messages from the super rich passengers on board to people on various points in various mainlands, back and forth and so forth. To the point that when the Californian, which gets within, depending on who you ask, 5 to 20 nautical miles of the Titanic, calls in distress saying, "We have been stopped in an ice field. Everyone divert course away from us." The Titanic replies with, "Shut up, you."
Damn.
The radio man, I don't have his exact words, but the radio man apparently spent about a solid half-minute telling the Californian to not contact the Titanic and to never interrupt him while he was sending out a personal message.
What a
As
bitch.
if as if the Californian would know.
I hope
Fun
that
fact.
guy specifically died.
Fun fact, the Californian then turns off its radio and doesn't hear the Titanic calling for help 2 hours later.
Oh my God.
That guy was pissed. He's like, fuck them. I'm fucking out of here.
It's night shift, I'm going to bed. Californian is a smaller ship, it's got one radio man.
After being accosted by a fucking Brit.
Yep. Yeah, no, literally. They tried to warn them at 10:55. At 11:40, the iceberg hits Titanic. They had literally 45 minutes in which they could have saved themselves if they listened.
They just got in their own fucking way.
Yep. Upon impact with the iceberg, at least 5 of the 16 compartments are breached. We don't know for certain, it may have been more, but we know it was a minimum of 5. Because that's what it takes to immediately start sinking the vessel. And oh boy, does it sink.
Yeah, it goes down real quick. It was like less than an hour before it starts breaking apart, and like less than 2 or 3 hours before it's completely gone.
Yeah, she is in pieces at the bottom of the ocean 40 minutes after impact.
40 minutes. Holy.
Yeah. What happens here with the breach is the designer Andrews is in the he's in the bridge with Captain Smith. He's got his designs, and he is able to assess that no matter what happens now, the Titanic will sink.
Oh, lovely.
He determines that what's going to happen, and this does happen, is that all the breaches are on the bow, on the front of the ship. meaning that the front of the ship is going to go under the water and it's going to sink faster and faster as time goes on. Effectively, the ship is going to flip itself. It's just going to go straight up like a knife and then sink straight down. Which is what starts to happen to the Titanic.
That's honestly terrifying. One, what a fucking terrible way to go. But two, to know and understand that it's going to happen regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Sucks.
And I misspoke earlier. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes, not 40 minutes.
I knew it was close.
There's a lot of 2s and a lot of 12s going on my screen. I'm like, I was like, and one of them got blanked out. Sorry about that.
So it's crazy how the person with the hyperfixation on Titanic got right with close to 3 hours.
Yeah, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. What does happen 40 minutes in is at 12:20 a.m. on April 15th, the Titanic's distress signal reaches the Carpathia. Now, the Carpathia is a Cunard liner. And it is the nearest ship that responds to the distress signal. However, it will take them more than 3 hours to arrive. They are 58 nautical miles away, and the only other ship that responds is the sister ship of the Titanic, the Olympic. However, they are both slower than the Carpathia and further away. Much closer is the Californian, which is between 5 and 20 nautical miles. The Californian reports a distance of approximately 20 miles at last contact. However, the British Board of Boat Safety rules that the Californian had to be within 5 miles and knowingly watched the Titanic sink, to which everyone on the Titanic and the Californian deny. The British Board of Safety is responsible for most of these deaths. So they're trying to cover their tracks.
Go fucking figure.
Because according to the British Board of Safety, the Titanic should have been traveling with far fewer lifeboats.
That was another thing that was interesting about the Titanic was they advertised how many lifeboats they had, even though it wasn't enough.
Yeah, the Titanic had lifeboats for something like for just under half, something like 1,200 of the 2,200 people that were on board. And they really weren't supposed to have more than enough for 900.
And they advertised that actively. They talked about how many lifeboats were on there.
Yeah, so it was kind of a big deal that the board blames the Californian blames the board. Everyone just sort of starts blaming each other in the aftermath of this. However, there's
the easiest way, ain't it?
Yep. However, there is one other vessel that is probably the most to blame for not helping. Spotted by both the Californian and the Titanic is another vessel which both the members of the survivors of the Titanic and the crew of the Californian say was too small to be either vessel. It's a much smaller vessel, and it is later identified as the Samson, a Norwegian fishing vessel that was hunting seals illegally in the area.
God,
it supposedly the track goes that heading away from the Titanic in the direction of the Californian was seen a small vessel too small to be the Californian. The Californian reports that its night watch was unable to contact a unidentified vessel far too small to be the Titanic heading from the direction of the Titanic sinking. This vessel is later identified as the Norwegian ship Samson, which, despite being smaller than any of the other ships we've mentioned today, still could have saved several hundred lives, but actively chose not to.
Well, yeah, they were conducting illegal activities.
Yeah, they're criminals. It's just like, yeah. But, like I said, we were going to blame Norway for something at some point. Here we are. Norwegian seal hunters.
I wonder if those people felt terrible, like later on. I wonder.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Titanic in this distress begins launching lifeboats with its orders of women and children first. They have more lifeboats than is required by the British Board of Trade, which, of course, blames the Californian for for having one radio man who is asleep at this time, instead of blaming themselves for not mandating actual lifeboats.
Of
Uh,
course.
yeah, the 20 lifeboats of the Titanic could carry 1,178 of the 2,227 people on board, and almost all of them launch at under capacity. There are two reasons for this. Reason number one, the crew feared that the davits, which is the process, sort of the cranes and other process by which you haul the lifeboats over the edge of the ship and lower them into the sea,
Yeah.
were not structurally sound enough to carry the weight of a lifeboat that was filled to capacity. So they began launching them with only partial capacity for fear that the entire system was going to rip off the boat and sink into the water. The reason they felt that way is because the Titanic had canceled all its lifeboat drills, one of which was supposed to take place that morning.
Oh, God.
So no one on board the ship had ever once practiced an evacuation of this vessel. Not
This
a
is just a
single
triangle
crew member had practiced evacuating the ship.
This is like the triangle shirt factory fire, except the exact
Except
on a
no
boat.
one locked the doors. What happened is no one knows how to use a door handle.
Rich people don't have door handles, I guess. No,
They
there's
have
our
servants
their
to do
staff
it, Aaron.
to open the door. So there's like,
They pay someone
oh
lesser
God,
than
how
them
do I
to do
open
it. Yes.
this?
Yeah.
Open sesame. Where's
Yeah.
Jeffries? Jeffries
Yeah.
is like their butler's just like face down in the water, floating dead.
Yeah.
Oh no! Already?
Jeffries,
Right,
no, no, never get out.
Yeah. Now, with this, the first lifeboat launched at 27 of 65 seats.
Hey.
This is the same lifeboat that had a couple of
Hey.
people who handed money around earlier, and other
Hey.
such individuals who are not women or children.
That's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also another reason why all these lifeboats are being launched at under capacity so horribly. It's not just that the crew doesn't know what they're doing and is afraid the ship will break apart under them at any moment. It's also that, for whatever reason, Captain Smith does not ever once sound general alarm, meaning that almost no one in third class or storage knows the ship is sinking until their level is already flooded and they cannot get out.
Jesus fucking Christ.
In fact, a number of people in first class don't know the ship is sinking until the water hits them.
Damn. How do you not know, though? You heard the collision. That much was be sure. You could feel the shudder. You would see the lights flicker, especially at that point. You
Here's
had
the
to have
thing.
known.
Titanic maintains power until 2:18 a.m. on April the 15th. So she is, aside from the ever-increasing amounts of water, she is more or less functioning normally for the first hour or so that this is going down. And it is during this first hour that almost all of the lifeboats get launched.
God damn.
Almost all the lifeboats are off the ship by the time she starts careening and people realize, oh, that wasn't a minor impact, which is nothing to worry about. The ship is going down and we're all dead. Yeah. Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that all the lifeboat drills have been canceled that day.
Yeah.
This literally had to have been an insurance scam. They literally did everything
Aaron, go
wrong.
get your tinfoil.
No. It's gonna get a little bit more tragic now. Because this is the moment we go under. The ship's stern, which is the back end of the boat where the propeller is, finally comes all the way out of the water at 2 a.m. of April the 15th. Now, what this means is everything that makes the boat move is now above the waterline. It should not be doing that.
Do you think the story of the guy jumping from the end and hitting the propeller is real? Or is that just a bit of artistic flair? I like to think he was real.
Why?
I don't know. Anyway, the propellers are coming up because the bow is filling with water. The front half of the ship is flooding constantly now. There's no stopping it. And this puts a lot of strain on the midsection of the ship. And it is at this point, when the ship can no longer be moved and is lifting out of the water, that Captain Smith turns to his crew, dismisses them, and tells them to abandon the ship.
It's a little late, though, eh?
At this point, they've gotten all the people that they can off. There's no point in them staying, and he leaves them, or he has them leave him to the bridge to go down with his ship. That is where he is last seen.
Well, yeah, it's considered noble and ethical to go down with your ship. You know, it's seen as a crying shame if you survive.
Yeah, his body is never found, and that's probably because of what happens next.
Blub, 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 blub.
At 2:18 a.m. on April the 15th, all power on the all electrical power on the Titanic fails. The power goes out completely, and the ship splits in two. As all that strain of being lifted out of the water and being tilted increasingly vertical on something that was never meant to do that causes a shearing effect, and the back half of the ship just pops off, while the front half just plummets into the depths of the ocean.
Into the unknown.
Yeah. Now, the back half of the ship bobs up and down like a cork for a minute, creating some wonderful displacement waves to drag everyone who had to jump overboard under with her before sinking.
And when it took them under, the suction that creates of going down, even if you're a strong swimmer, like, you are going way, way far down, hundreds of feet, if not almost 1,000. And going that far, that deep, that quickly, it's a pretty quick...
Yeah, you're in ice cold water, and you are being pulled down by the suction of 52,000 tons of displacement, plus an additional 46,000 tons of cargo, adding to the weight.
So yeah, a lot of people who tried to swim for it, or maybe were in the water, oh, that was a tough bargain.
Yeah. No, basically everyone goes down. At 12:20 a.m. on April 15th, the Titanic is sunk. It is here that we note that the ship's musicians played throughout the sinking. They started playing in the first class lounge and dining hall, but they moved to the deck once it became apparent that pandemonium had broken out. There is some debate as to what their last song was. However, it is not disputed that they continued to play until the ship broke in half.
That's honestly really badass and quite heroic, I think.
At which point, the entire band died.
Well, yeah, I mean, they sacrificed themselves, but they tried to... They were true to their craft, and they attempted to calm the situation a little bit.
Fun fact, in the movie, the band is one of my favorite bands, actually, Gaelic Storm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you're fighting the Kraken and you're just a bard. Stands on the sinking ship playing. Yeah. It is terrible. Like, this is, we talk, these are definitely among the, like, stories of people dying nobly on the Titanic. It's definitely one of the most famous stories, and certainly one of the most deserved. At the end of the day, or should I say, by the dawn, there are 1,522 people lost at sea. and 705 people saved on the lifeboats.
And like I said, about 330 of them were their bodies were recovered.
Yeah. Which means that the total amount of bodies, both living and corpses, is still less than the carrying capacity of the lifeboats. Because the lifeboats could carry 1,178.
And there were 700.
Yeah. With 330 bodies, that's 1,035 bodies recovered on on life vessels that could carry an additional 100. Yeah. The rescue ship is, of course, the Cunard liner Carpathia, which was the nearest vessel, and and I believe arrived about an hour after the Titanic sank.
A whole hour. God.
Yeah, this is a big part of
They could
why.
have saved Jack.
Yeah, this is a big part as to why when the lifeboats are emptied and forced to go back with the Carpathia, this is why everyone has frozen to death in the water who didn't get dragged down with the displacement of the sinking ship.
They could have saved Jack.
These people have been been in sub-zero water for over an hour at minimum.
Hypothermia.
Yeah, so this is why everyone is dead. Yeah, that's the sinking of the Titanic right there.
And it wasn't until 1985, on September 1st, when a team of French and American scientists located the wreckage 350 miles southeast of southeast of Newfoundland in Canada. So they got pretty darn close, and it was quite the discovery. But did you know that the search for the Titanic was actually a secondary goal?
Yeah, it was the primary point.
Oh, right. Right.
They worked for the U.S. Navy trying to locate lost nuclear submarines.
Yeah, that's right. Also, how do you lose a submarine?
It go bloop bloop bloop.
Personally, I think you're Russian and you hire Sean Connery to be its captain.
There's a problem on this submarine. Anyways, yeah, so they were initially searching for the submarine, and they had good luck and had additional time. So as the cover-up, they were looking for the Titanic, and they located it.
Yeah, yeah, they found the wreck of the Titanic, which that's good. We know a lot more about what happened to the ship than we used to, simply because we were able to look at the remains some 70 years later.
Both halves too, which is quite impressive. We could see how far it drifted apart, which I think is close to a half mile.
Yep. Yeah, because one was a lot heavier and it went under a few minutes sooner.
And when it went down, they basically floated and drifted apart.
Yeah. Pretty nasty. Yeah. The sinking of the Titanic led to a lot of new international safety regulations, especially for sailing in the North Atlantic.
Crazy how that
God, thank God.
Yeah. The first of these is my personal favorite to come out of this, something called the International Ice Patrol, which I did not know existed and is a branch of the United States Coast Guard to this day.
Yeah, genuinely, they have to look and make sure that there's ice-free pathways. Or,
I
they send
love
out
that name.
ice-breaking ships, which is kind of cool.
Yep.
Those ships are awesome.
What this is a bunch of Coast Guard cutters that are sent out into the North Atlantic to track ice flows and icebergs and ice fields, mark their position, mark their movement, and more or less track them, so that ships can be made to avoid them and to send out other ships to destroy them should they prove to be too much of a hazard. Basically, you will never hit us again. It is funded by 13 nations, and like most UN peacekeeping forces, it's run by the Americans.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
Yeah. It's a very fun thing. I didn't think it was still in operation when I first found it because it has the name of something that came from the early 1900s and doesn't exist anymore. But no, it's real and it's still there because we still use these sea routes. The second thing was the establishment of the first International Convention of Safety of Life at Sea. If you think governments making overly long names for things is new, I'm sorry to disappoint. That's been happening for over a century.
The Government Association of Extra Long Names and...
Will you please go back to the Ministry of Silly Walks? We beg of you.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah. What this did was it created a lot of new lifeboat regulations to ensure the safety of passengers. We're going to look at the American ones in a minute. And the reason for this that this convention chose to focus on lifeboats was because by the White Star Line's own admission, they had more lifeboats than they were regulated to have, and they still did not have enough for half the people on the ship.
Oh.
It is the lack of lifeboats that get blamed for the majority of the loss of life. The iceberg is responsible for sinking the ship, but that's no excuse not to have a backup plan for when the ship takes on water.
Yeah. Understandable, yeah.
Yeah, not the best.
Yeah, no. Now, with the increased lifeboat regulations, the U.S. laws were amended to mandate the following changes. Number one, every lifeboat must have at least 4 crewmen assigned to it, and all crewmen assigned to a lifeboat must be familiar with its operation. Because having crew who don't know how to work the lifeboat system is why half of them were launched at under capacity.
Well, and they also dropped a ton of them into the water. It was not an easy landing.
Yeah. Like I said, we don't know how to work the rigging. So, number one, right there.
Not to mention, they turned around from the maiden voyage to this in such a... Like the seaworthiness test to the maiden voyage with no time, so the crew didn't have time to familiarize themselves either.
Yeah. No,
and they were supposed to have a test drill that day that got canceled.
Yeah. The second thing that the U.S. Regulates with that is that every ship is to perform a lifeboat drill twice a month. This is non-negotiable and will not be ignored. You will perform your scheduled drill on your scheduled drill date unless you are in the middle of, I don't know, a hurricane.
In which case, you probably should be using your emergency plan.
In which case, it's a live test and we have other problems.
True, yeah.
And finally, every ship that flies a U.S. flag or is registered for the U.S. here has to have sufficient lifeboats for everyone on board, passengers and crew. It's a no man left behind policy.
A good policy to have.
Yep. Which differs from the previous policy enforced by the British Board of Trade, which was enough to reasonably accommodate any women or children who may or may not be on board, i.e., approximately 1/2 to 2/3 of your passenger complement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gee.
That is so that's some of the changes that it led to. Just from the regulation standpoint, a lot of naval safety came out of the fact that this one ship just up and killed everybody.
Well, it was such a prominent thing. There were so many prominent people aboard, and kind of sad, but very recently here, there was a tourist group that was doing a deep sea expedition to visit the Titanic, the Ocean Gate, that tragically lost their lives attempting to view the ship, and it's somewhat poetic, very tragic, but the ship claimed a few more lives, 100 and what, 10 years later?
Yeah.
112 years?
Yeah.
I feel like the only person like I really feel bad for is like the son, because one, he didn't even want to go on it. His dad like was like kind of forcing him to go,
Yeah.
and like that's the only.
Kid probably
Er-
wanted to stay home and just play Fortnite.
Yeah, exactly. And then the dad just was like, "No, you're going on the boat." It's like,
the thing too is just as an American, what are you doing getting on board anything that ends in the word gate? Water gates, ocean gates,
Pizza
I'm
Gate.
just saying aquatic
Golden
gate
Gate
is a recipe for disaster here. Hey, Golden Gate is only a matter of time, okay?
Oh,
We
no.
just built the bridge in Baltimore.
I mean, they do have like one of the highest, like it's pretty popular for, unfortunately, for suicide
Other
attempts.
activities,
Well, they
shall
now
we say?
have nets there to protect from that.
Do they really have nets?
Yes, they do. They were installed in like 2018.
Yeah.
Oh,
Modern problems
good.
require modern solutions, baby.
that has been a problem for a very long time, I feel like.
Well, someone finally invented a net.
Yeah. We could just be like Japan. We could just name it the unaliving forest and make it a tourist attraction for people to go into and do that, but no.
Okay, that's a really big disservice. The Japanese people really hate that and really want
I
to
know.
get away
I
from
know
it.
they hate it so much, but it's like
Fucking
look
Logan
at what-
Paul.
Oh
Look at what
God,
it's
that's
become.
yeah.
look at what it's become. Yeah. We are straying far from the Titanic here, guys.
That shows how far underwater we've gotten.
Yeah. But anyway, Justin, would you like to tell them what to expect next time?
Oh boy,
Next
what
time.
is coming next time? Oh boy, oh
Next
gee.
time on Historical Humans.
We have Sherman's March to the Sea, where a Union general, followed
Yeah,
by
boy.
a ragtag team of soldiers, burn their way to the sea. Nothing stands in their way. No town, no farm, no fields even.
Yeah.
He's gonna show them. He's gonna show those rebels
Yeah.
what Union Fury really
Watch
looks
The
it.
like.
fun part is
Watch.
we all have a small connection to it in a very
Yeah.
stringent way, but you're gonna have to follow the next episode to hear what that
Yeah.
is.
Yes.
So yeah, come on back to watch a very angry man burn a ton of cotton fields and get a tank named after him.
Which
raised
coincidentally came with a flamethrower attachment.
All right, see you guys in the next one. Peace.